I never ran so fast to sit down and record an episode before. I said I need to get on camera. I need to start speaking this because I was having my daily, hourly, whatever therapy session with the Holy Spirit, and I was just talking, and the way things were just flowing, I said, "No, someone write this down. Someone write this down." And I've had in my notes app, like I typically will just, jot down whatever ideas and whatever things come to me throughout the week or whenever for an episode. But things were flowing so fast. And I had a different episode planned actually. But I said, let me sit down. Let me get this out. And this started actually earlier this week when I had a session with a client and I was debriefing with my clinical supervisor, and he said something that really struck me. So, dealing with a elderly client, this is a woman who's alone, she's single, divorced, and she, just has her and her cat, and pretty much she's just like, really struggling with finding purpose and feeling valued, feeling connection, not really knowing like where life went wrong. And she's very lonely and just things are looking very bleak for her, right? And so a lot of the core themes and kind of the help that she's seeking is feeling like she needs connection, like she needs purpose, like she lived her life, she was married, that fell apart. What is, what is left for her? She was working, that was taken from her when she had to retire. Now, what is left for her? She's really struggling with identity. And my supervisor said something that I've heard in different ways said before, but the way he said it just really struck me and I went deeper. But he said, if your identity is in anything, you don't actually have an identity. And he said that, and he has many graces over his life. So I know wisdom flows from him. But when he said that, I looked at him and I said, sir, let's unpack that further. And I took it further and I said, if anything that can change or be taken from you should not be what you base your identity on. So if your identity is based on anything that can change or that can be taken from you, you don't actually have an identity. And I was just brewing on this and just thinking about how we always say, oh, like I feel like my purpose is to do this, and I talked about this in the previous episode. My purpose is to do this, and I have the gift to do this, and I have this, and I have this, and I have this. And people live their whole life in based on like I'm a doctor, or I'm a software engineer, and I've created this platform, or I started this business. And yes, you've added value into people's lives, and you've done something, but if your identity is based on what you've done instead of who you are, you don't actually have an identity. You don't actually have a sense of who you are. You don't actually have a solid foundation. And I was just thinking about it. I was just like, people are really just looking for something to do. Like you're bored. You should never base your identity on your boredom or your need, a desire to do something or to busy yourself, right? A lot of parents will see this, and a lot of parents where after their kids have left the house, they spent years from marriage. It was buy a house and then, secure the promotion or get the stable job. And you're doing all these, taking all these steps that feel purposeful and feel like you know who you are, you know the direction you're going, and you know what to do, you know what life is meant for, you know what life is about. To have kids, to raise these kids, now when all of your work is done, all of the steps are complete, you've checked off all these check boxes, what is left of you, what is left of who you are, like what, it's kind of like in Toy Story when Andy finally grew up and went to university, and the toys were just like, wait, we get thrown away now, like there's no purpose for us, there's no need for us since Andy's not a child and Andy doesn't play with us anymore. And it's just like your identity as a parent was in those children. And I hear a lot of moms say this, and hear me out. You are, your sole identity and your sole purpose is not to raise your kids. Like that can't be your purpose. right? Like, that can't be your purpose, because what of the people that, God forbid, or, unfortunately, lost their child or lost their children? Like, what of them? Is that to say that they no longer have identity? Is that to say that they no longer have purpose? Or for those that unfortunately cannot have children, your identity cannot be placed in something or someone that can change. That can be a medium, a vessel. That can be a ways of getting to something, but that cannot be that thing. It cannot be that thing. And even in the same way, I've heard somebody say, and some people say, like, I believe that my purpose is to get married. Like, my purpose is marriage. And I don't know how to break it to you. Actually, I do. I'm breaking it to you right now. That cannot be your identity. Your identity cannot be based in you getting married. Because, so sorry, but do you know the things that can happen in a marriage, the things that can happen between two people? Like, that's such a, we thank God for how he covers marriages, how he blesses marriages, and we, put our trust in him that he's going to sustain us. But things can change. And if you put your soul value in another person and your soul value in dependent on somebody that can change, and not because it's bad to change, not because that's negative and people aren't allowed to do that, but if you put your identity in that, you're putting on something that is very unstable, that has a lot of potential to damage you, to hurt you, to disappoint you. And a lady that I very highly, highly respect, her and her late husband, I know her as Auntie Phyllis. When her husband passed away, a few years ago, like 6 years ago now, when her husband passed away, and before that, me and her grew close because we served in church together, and she would teach me a lot of things, and she would tell me a lot of things. And there's one thing I'll never forget that she told me that her husband would always say to her, and he would just look at her frequently and just say, Phyllis, remember to make sure that God is always your first love. He always say, Phyllis, make sure God is your first love. Phyllis, make sure God is your first love. And that really stuck to me, because especially as women, we have a way of idolizing relationships and idolizing marriage and idolizing our partners and men, and making somebody else the center of our universe, making somebody else the center of our lives and the center of everything that we're about. And I just really admired and respected how he loved her so much, and he cared so much about her purpose and her identity and who God made her to be, that he would not allow her to get distracted by him, and he would not allow her to idolize him and to idolize their marriage. And he would always help her recenter herself. And that was something that I took as my 20-year-old self. I took that and I said, that's something that I'm going to do my best to remember for myself, and also to always encourage and to nurture in my future marriage. That remember to never make somebody else your first love. Jesus is always going to be my first love. He should always be your first love. He should always be the center of your universe, the center of everything. At the center of it all should be Jesus that you see, right? And this idea that marriage is your purpose is like, marriage, as I said, can be a vehicle to get to your purpose, and marriage can be a medium, but be a wise passenger. Don't let marriage be your purpose. Don't let something that can change, something that can crash, God forbid, something that you can get ejected from, God forbid, again. Don't let that be your purpose, because when you lose that, or if you lose that, then what are you left with, right? And even in the way that we approach God, there has to be a certain understanding of who he is, of his identity. And for me, that is an ongoing search, and that is an ongoing thing that I feel like we can never stop asking for. We can never stop seeking to know God more, because like he is so much more than our human minds can comprehend and can understand. And so, as I've said before, there's a point where we have to stop trying to understand him in totality, but just to go deeper. I don't think you should strive to understand God entirely, because we can never. And maybe that's where the devil went wrong in thinking that, I got this guy figured out. But to understand him deeper, to understand him more. And if you think that Jesus is worthy, or God is worthy of praise because of what he does, I would question that you don't really understand who he is, because God is not worthy of he's not worthy because of what he does. He's worthy of our praise because of who he is. We thank him because of what he has done and what he does for us. There's a big difference. And so if you think that he's worthy because of what he can do, then when he stops doing what he can do, will you stop praising, and will you stop thinking that he's worthy? And that's something huge that we can also reflect back onto ourselves, because if we only think that we are worthy and we have identity and we have value and we have purpose because of what we can do, and not because of who we are, then immediately when you stop being able to do what you can do, you lose a sense of identity, you lose a sense of purpose, you lose a sense of value. And that's probably the worst place to be. There's a quote that says, the only thing worse than death is a life with no purpose. I believe it goes like this: the only thing worse than death is a life with no purpose. Just living a life just anyhowly, having no hope for the future, having no passion, having nothing to pour your love and to pour your life's energy into. Like, that should be the only thing worse than death, right? And so when you look at yourself and you think that because you can't do something or because you're incapable, and it's unfortunate, because that's why I look at elderly people especially, and I really try and learn from them in the good things that they say and in the bad things that they say, like in a lot of their regrets and a lot of the things that they are happy that they did. You'll often hear some people that were maybe very work focused, very career focused, like the woman that I spoke about in the beginning. She was very career focused and her career was everything to her. And so when that career was taken from her, she had nothing left. And it's just like, I'm very huge on being diligent and being passionate and persevering and giving, as much as you can to something. However, you can't give everything you have away to something that can change. There has to be a solid foundation on something that cannot change. Someone who cannot change. And we all know who that is. But the idea that if God does not do something, then he's not worthy, that's something that you really need to sit and reflect on. And that's something that, 2020 2024 has taught me to praise through the pain, to praise and thank God through the brokenness and through the hardship and through feeling like you were not going to get through, and through the mental instability, the constant breakdowns. I have lost count of how many times I've crashed out this year. Like, oh my gosh, 2024 taught me perseverance, and it really taught me that indeed God is good. If there's nothing else that I know about God, if I have not, been able to grasp anything about his identity, anything about his person, anything about who he is, I know that God is good. I know that God is kind all the time, in every situation. And Job is a perfect example of that. He said, even if you slay me, even if you are the one to do me in, even if you are the one to, see me through, to bring this suffering upon me, yet I will still trust you. yet I will still trust you. I will still know. And I love that he said trust you and not praise you. For some reason, I really love that, because to me it's like trust takes faith. Trust takes love. Trust takes hope. Trust takes enduring. Praising sometimes is just like, even praising sometimes is kind of like you're you're exciting yourself, or there's something that you have to ginger you a little bit. But trust is like, I still know you're good, even if you slay me, even if what I see doesn't look good, I still know this about you. And knowing that about God has helped me to know this about myself, that even when I see myself and I've made so many mistakes and I've done so many things that I should have known better, and I'm not in the place or the position that I think I should be right now, that I still trust in who I am and in who God has said I am, and what he said about me, and what he said about my future and my destiny. And so it has helped me really this year to stay strong with all the winds, with all the turmoil, with all the noise, and to keep pushing forward and to keep persevering. Because at this point in time, if I'm not sure of myself, then what else am I? Because I spent like all of my childhood being so unsure of myself and being so insecure, and being so having so much self-doubt and having so much anxiety and issues with comparison and not feeling good enough. And I was so insecure as a child. Like, people look at me now and they don't imagine it, but I was so insecure. I hated everything about myself. I hated how tall I was. I used to be really tall, guys. I know if you know me if you know me in real life, you know how tall I am. I used to be like the second or third tallest growing up. I matured very fast. I hated everything about my body. I hated my skin. I hated my voice. I hated I hated everything. Like, I hated my hair. I hated how I thought. I hated how I talked. I hated, like, I could not think of a single thing that I liked about myself growing up. And I was so insecure. And I was so focused on what everybody else had. And I was so focused on what everybody else made look good. And, it wasn't until I started receiving words and singing, and I really looked at myself. There's certain points that I can recall in my development as a preteen, as a teenager, and as a young adult, where there's certain words that I heard either from the word of God spoken through people just speaking in general, or, the Holy Spirit speaking to my spirit, that I really held on to, and that I had to believe for myself that they were true, that I'm able to stand and look and be as confident as I am now. Because if you know me, you know one thing about me is that I'm very assured of myself. I used to think I was stubborn. I used to think all of that. Now I know that it's the willpower God has given me. I don't look down on it as stubbornness and being strong headed. There's a reason, because there's times and there's challenges that will really test you. And without that willpower, where would I be? And so there was a specific time somebody was speaking. I can't recall who exactly, but I think they were speaking about like how whenever there's a power match, there's always one power that triumphs. There's always somebody that stands out. And as they were saying that, what I heard and what was being spoken to my spirit is that whenever somebody enters a room, because I really struggled with confidence, whenever somebody enters a room, or whenever people are gathered in a room, rather, there's always someone that can enter that room and that draws attention. There's always someone that can enter that room, and above everybody else, other people can have impact, but it's like they're making the most impact. It's like they're like floating on clouds. If you ever watch movies when like somebody walks in and, and it can be multiple people, but I was hearing whenever there's a gathering and somebody enters that room, there's that one person, and I decided within myself from the time that I heard that I want to be that person, not for self-centered reasons or that like I want to be noticed and I want to, because I never like being the center of attention per se, but I recognize that within myself that I have so much value to add when I enter a room, and that I know that I'm a problem solver, and I know that if just given the chance and I'm in a space, I can help people. I knew that. And so I decided within myself that whenever I enter a space, whenever I enter a room, I want it to be known that what people needed before I entered that room has now entered with me. I wanted that to be known, and I wanted that to be so assured. And so I had to believe that for myself. That was one word that I really, really, really let sink into my spirit. And so now when I go into a space, no matter how much noise it is, no matter what's going on, I know that the people that, the people that need to see me, the people that need to know me, that need to hear me, will see that and will receive that. I walk in confidently. And like I said, if you know me in real life and you've seen me, because social media and, online has a way of distorting things you're not able to see. Physically, my stature, I'm not that tall. I don't like to say I'm short, not because being short is bad, but just my preference, whatever. I'm not that tall, but a lot of people don't realize it until they're like really close face to face with me and they really get to like examine it. It's like, wait, you're actually really short. And I'm just like, yeah, okay, Anne, because I don't carry myself like that. When it's left to me, I literally, except you're probably like 6'3" and above, if you are anywhere below that in that range, to me, we're the same height. Call it delusion, call it whatever you like. I don't carry myself as somebody that is like short and small and can be easily hidden and tucked away. No, you're going to feel my presence. You're going to know I'm here. You're going to, even if I don't say anything, if I say something, you're going to know I'm here. You're going to feel it. You're going to know it. And so you can tell. And so that's why it's a very big difference when I'm having confidence issues and when I'm struggling with my perception of myself and my identity and my value. Because then you'll literally, like, I'm not even joking. Anytime that I'm really struggling with like identity, my self-perception, whatever, all these things, I'll have a lot of people come and tell me, I'm just realizing how short you are. Like, you just look really small. Da, 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 da. Like, physically, it'll be known. Whereas when I'm confident and I know who I am, I'm standing on that. I'm not being shaken by that, by the circumstances, whatever. Like, I'm really walking in the fullness, because you can feel my energy. Like, I always tell people good and bad. And so that's also something that I have to be very mindful of. People forget how physically, my size is physically. And that's something that I've had to grow in awareness of. But it's just like something that I actually learned today, which was just so funny. But it's like, you can't, I actually wrote this down. Let me not even say it incorrectly, because you risk delaying the fruit of a seed that you never knew was planted. I'll say that again. You risk delaying the fruit of a seed that you never knew was planted. And to me, I see this as there's things inside of you that you're meant to embrace. You're meant to know about yourself. You're meant to love. You're meant to see and understand and be like, wow, this is amazing. This is so great. This piece and this piece work so good together. And there's a beautiful fruit. There's beautiful things that come out of knowing that. But you risk delaying that fruit from coming out, or even just enjoying that fruit, because you don't know that seed was planted. You don't know what was placed inside of you. Like there's so many things that I delayed, and so many actions, so many steps, so many interactions that I delayed because I didn't know the confidence that was put inside of me. And yes, there's many external factors and trauma and upbringing and these things that played a part in my not knowing and suppressing that. Yes, those all play a piece. But there's a certain point where you take accountability and you start making room and you start taking the steps to get to the place that you want to be. And I say this because today I had an encounter, not an encounter, sorry, not spiritual. I had a situation where I recently moved. And as I'm moving, I'm transferring all my utilities and stuff like that, transferring my Wi-Fi. So I hit up a friend from university to help me with my Wi-Fi. He's getting me good deals. I'm just like, okay, love that for me. And so he's kind of looking into it, and he's like, okay, there's two ways where either your building has it set up, and so long as we activate it, your Wi-Fi is good to go from the day that we activate it, or we got to send you a modem. And because the Canada Post strike, it might take some time, might come before the weekend, might come after, yada yada yada. And so he looked into it and he said, we're gonna have to send you the modem. I said, okay, cool. I'll hotspot myself for the times that I'm at home and I need to use Wi-Fi. Mind you, I have my iPad, my phone, my work laptop, and my personal laptop, and probably some other gadgets, devices. I need Wi-Fi. So how much can hotspot really take? But I'm just like, okay, fair enough. This should get here by Monday. I'm typically not really home over the weekend, so it should be fine. I don't need that much Wi-Fi. Monday comes, not here. I'm checking the mail. Multiple days. Different things that I ordered from before are coming before this. And I'm just like, what's a one? I had to do a whole work day hotspotting. Terrible times. Terrible. Losing connection during meetings was just terrible. And then I message him. He's probably not going to see this, so it's fine. I message him and I was like, hey, can you look into this issue? And he looks into it and gets back to me. He's like, hey, actually, there's something wrong with our system. It actually turns out that your building automatically had the Wi-Fi set up. I don't know why it said we needed to send you a modem. So it was already set up for you. So from a week before, I had access to that Wi-Fi, but I did not know it. And I was struggling and trying to divvy up small hotspot from my phone to my devices when I had how much power and how much an access that I could have used that could have made life so simple. But because I did not know, I couldn't tap into that. I couldn't utilize that. And it's just like, there's so many things that I look at now and I'm just like, oh my gosh, the way I was taken advantage of because I didn't know the voice that I had. The opportunities that I lost out on because I didn't know that I could ask for this. I didn't know that people favored me. I didn't know that, this is what people see me as. This is who I am, that I could take this up. I didn't know this. And it's just like, you risk delaying this fruit. You risk losing out on this. Like, I had to make the decision to stand on certain words that make me confident. I carry this knowledge now that what is inside of me, like there's so much that the Lord has placed inside of me. There's so much that I have to discover about myself. And the more that I know, the more my capacity grows. There's a difference that I speak about in my book between truth and fact. Truth is what's here, what the Lord placed from day one, who I am. Truth is my identity in its fullness, in totality. Shout out Megan Ashley. Truth is that. Fact is what I'm aware of. I can't experience the fruit of the truth until it becomes fact, until I'm aware of what the Lord has placed inside of me, until I'm aware of these things. And I can't tap into it. And you see it, like, for example, a great example actually is the creator Any. And for a lot of successful people that you see are just kind of, they move around in different sectors and it's like they're hitting everywhere. It's like they, God has blessed them with all the talent in the world. And I actually have noticed that for these people, it's not even so much. Yes, there are people that are just very talented, like, and have a lot of skill, are able to pick up skills. But for someone like Annie, for example, she went to law school, studied hard, very intelligent, did what she was doing, was succeeding as a lawyer, and then was succeeding in her content creation. And when they tried to play her, she said, I'm going to focus on content creation. And you can see how her life continues to go up, not because she wasn't good as a lawyer, she's better as a content creator. It's because of when you know what's in you, when you really know what you're about, you can apply yourself to almost anything. I won't say everything, but to almost anything. And you're going to succeed in that. Like, no matter what position they put you, no matter what challenge that you face, when you really know what's inside of you, you'll know how to draw on certain tools to get through that situation. And it'll look different for everybody, because not everybody's going to go through and should have to experience the same things in life. But that's something that I've come to know, that you really have to know what is inside. You really have to know how to activate certain gifts within yourself, how to draw on certain graces in yourself and in other people. But that's maybe an episode for another time. But I was considering saving this for a future episode as I'm rounding up this season. But I said, no, this one, the people need to hear this one. I can't lie. So that's what I really want people to take away from this, is really digging deep and getting to the depths, and just even reanalyzing that foundation for your identity. Reanalyze it. A process that I've actually started, and maybe part of this is also grieving, because a process that I've had to start is like pre-grieving certain things that I've attached my identity to. And I talked about how, the name change, I grieved. And there's still, in different ways, some grieving still going on with that. Like, it's not something that just clears overnight. But pre-grieving certain things, certain people that I've attached my identity to, because life still goes on after them. It has to go on. Life has to go on. I still have to be moving forward positively, not negatively. Like, you have to find a way to move on. And so why not prepare yourself? Why not make the way easier for yourself before that time even comes? You don't have to be faced with such a tough reality when the things that you attached to your identity and you thought gave you purpose are taken away from you, or you lose, or you give up yourself, So maybe that's a process that you might have to consider, in like pre-grieving that career that you thought you were going to do, pre-grieving that relationship, or grieving that some people, like your parents, some people, it's hard to say, but kind of preparing yourself that, like Job said, even if he slays me, even if everything, because how do you lose everything? How do you lose your children and you don't lose your mind? I mean, maybe you could say he lost his mind when he tore his clothes and did all that, but how do you lose all of that? And you can still stand and say you trust God. You can still stand and say there's a reason worth living. You can still stand and say there's hope for tomorrow, that you should still go on. There's something within Job. There's something there that we can all tap into. There's an understanding of who God is and who he's made you to be that helped him to stand strong. And so that's my final note on that.